think what Portland is doing right now is taking a lot of calls from a lot of teams around the league, some serious to begin with, showing real interest, and a lot just checking in, a lot just seeing what a potential asking price for Damian Lillard could be. But one thing so far, Portland, I'm told, is not impressed with what Miami has to offer them. I think there's two rails with this James Harden situation. You have an organization that would still love to keep him in Philadelphia for the season. If there's a way as the summer goes on to try to convince him that they can still make this work together, that he has a chance to compete for a championship. They've got a new coach, Nick Nurse, with the Sixers. But at the same time, they are talking to teams. The Clippers remain a team very interested.
All right, Tim, let's start with you. We're going to play a little hypothetical on this one. Which would be the better at Big Three? Bam, Jimmy, and Dame, or Kawhi, PG, and Harden?
We never talk about hypotheticals in free agency.
Yeah, exactly.
We never talk about hypothetical trades or anything. I'm going to have to go with the Miami group with Dame, Jimmy, and Bam for a few reasons. One, the Clipper guys are never on the court, right? Sure. Every year we talk about Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. They have a chance to win a title if they can get on the court. Every year, those guys are hurt. That's part of it. The other thing is, if you just look at how those guys are balanced out, what do you always think about, right? You want a point guard, a wing, and a big. You have 3 All-NBA guys as a point guard, a wing, and a big in Miami. Obviously, with the Clippers, you got 2 wings, maybe 2 of the best wings in the league, and then a point guard, but still not the same depth inside. And I also think the two-way combination of Jimmy and Bam defensively, obviously that's not Dame's strong suit. I really like the overall depth and balance of that Miami team. And I think if you put those 3 guys together, the Heat are maybe the favorite to win the championship. Whereas if James Harden is on the Clippers, obviously they're going to take a big step forward. They have a chance to get out of the West. But I just don't think you'd put them on quite that same footing. They'd probably be at the top of that group of teams that's trying to chase Denver instead of being the team that's absolutely at the top.
I think it's the opposite. I think that the Clippers would be not only a perfect fit for James Harden. Of course, this cannot be load management central. That's the caveat there. You're right. They do miss a lot of time. And imagine what would have happened if Paul George was playing in the postseason and if Kawhi did not get hurt and what that Suns series could have become. Nonetheless, James Harden, with those two, you have another effective scorer. You have somebody who can distribute the ball. He led the league in assists this past season with the 76ers. The Clippers need someone like that. They were 28th in potential assists last year in the NBA. They love the glacial pace, though. If you can think of a better fit than putting James Harden, whose average touch length on offense is about 5 seconds. The Clippers are right below that, just around 3.3. It works. They were looking for a true point guard last year. That's the reason they went out and got Russell Westbrook from the buyout market. If you bring James Harden into the mix here, you finally fill that void. You finally can assume the best potential with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and take this team out of the rut that they've been in, whether it's been due to injury, whether it's been due to availability, and actually become a threat and make some noise in the Western Conference.
I mean, you're right that the fit is good. But to me, if we're talking about who's better, if you put James Harden on the Clippers, nobody's saying they're the favorite to win the title. You put Dame on the Heat, I think a lot of people would say they're at best or at worst a co-favorite to win it. So that's why I'd give the edge of the Heat. But James would be an amazing fit in L.A. There's no question. They get him for a rotation player. It's a significant upgrade. It makes them a real threat as opposed to just kind of a dangerous team.
Okay, let's bring Harry Douglas into this conversation, fresh out of Alaska, the deep sea fishing. HD, what do you think about this? You like the Clippers or you like the Heat with Harden or Dame? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Miami Heat. When you look at this basketball team, they were able to make 2 NBA Finals with Jimmy Butler being their top guy and also Bam Adebayo. You add a Damian Lillard to that mix, a guy at that point guard position, as soon as he crosses half court, you better pick him up. Basically, you got to give him the Steph Curry treatment. And you adding a guy that can close games out, something that the Miami Heat actually needed this past season when they were in the NBA Finals versus the Denver Nuggets. They didn't have that other guy outside of Jimmy Butler that could just, bona fide be a scorer at will. When I look at the Los Angeles Clippers, and here's the thing that's tricky about this team. If they're healthy, we're having different conversations every year about the Clippers. It's just that I don't trust a Kawhi Leonard being healthy. I don't trust a Paul George being healthy. And if you're not going to have those guys, does James Harden have to be the second scorer on this team if those guys are healthy? No, he can be the third guy. But if one of those guys are out, is James Harden going to be consistent? Because I go back to 2021 when he was with the Sixers in games 5 and 6 versus the Miami Heat, and James Harden was Casper the Friendly Ghost. He didn't show up. I go to game 6 and 7 this year in 2022 versus the Boston Celtics, and James Harden was Casper the Friendly Ghost. He didn't show up again. So now we're talking about, is James Harden going to show up when the team needs him the most, on top of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George being healthy? So that's why I'm leaning towards the Miami Heat.
Well, how do you define a big three? It's how people complement each other, and my strength may not be your greatest strength. Look at our big three right here. We all have different things that we're very good at, and we can all pick each other up and carry the conversation along. Los Angeles can cover for James Harden's deficiencies on defense. Kawhi Leonard can cover for his deficiencies in the postseason. Harry, you're right. I'm not denying that he was Casper the Philly Ghost, or however you wanted to put it, in Game 6 and Game 7 against Boston. That's the reason that team has not been able to get out of the second round of the postseason with James Harden on that roster. You can take the playoff experience that you get from a Kawhi Leonard and a Paul George and expect that a fresh start for James Harden. Yes, I know it'll be his fourth team since 2021. He's been searching for that right fit. He hasn't been able to find it with any of the duos, the big threes, any of the teammates he's played with in the past couple of years. I think that this fit, I know there's a lot of hypotheticals here. This is free agency. We haven't even figured out if he's getting traded away. He may stay in Philly this year for all things considered, but I like where it could go because they need that playmaker. They need somebody who can create for Paul George, for Kawhi Leonard, so the load is not entirely on both of those two, because we've seen what happens. There's a breakdown there. And if this is a big three we're talking about, everybody's going to have different responsibilities within that core, and that's what would make it so great.
When you talk about complimenting, I mean, the thing that I really like about this fit in Miami is that when you go back to the way these playoffs played out, Damian Lillard is a guy who, as Harry said, is going to take over down the stretch of games. For as much as Jimmy Butler did that, it's not really what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Right? He wants to be getting everybody involved, making plays on defense, kind of filling in the gaps where it's required. But he doesn't need to be the guy that's scoring 45 a game in the playoffs. Whereas we've seen Dame thrives in those moments. And you, as Harry said, when you looked at that series against Denver, Miami was able to stick with Denver throughout that series. They were able to keep the pace slow. They were able to stay competitive in those games, but they couldn't score enough. And you put Damian Lillard on that team instead of Gabe Vincent.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's a much, much different equation.
Also, of course, Jimmy Butler had some knee/ankle issues, obviously, in the NBA Finals, so that would kind of take the load off of him in that regard. Okay, HD, I want to talk to you about what Tim said earlier. He said that if the Heat get Dame, that would be the best big three in the entire league. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. Because I think the proof is in the pudding as well. We're talking about a team that made the NBA Finals twice without Dame. So if you add him into the equation, you talk about the mindset of these players. Jimmy Butler, we know he's physically strong. We know he's mentally strong. Damian Lillard, we know he's a guy that's physically strong, who's mentally strong, a guy that wants to rise up in the moments when they arise. And I can't help but think about Damian Lillard dribbling the ball from his left hand, left hand, stepping back to the right, knocking down a three in Paul George's face. And then we all know the meme that went viral on social media. So when I look at a guy like Damian Lillard, he is the superstar player, I think, that can complement Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler to perfection. So I like that big three.
Best big three in the NBA. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
Over the big three that won a title 12 months ago in Steph, Clay, and Draymond.
Yep.
Over the one that's being formed right now in Phoenix with
Yep.
Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal.
Yep.
Did I hear that correctly? Mm-hmm. I don't know how you can put the unknown is what we argue about here on the show. It's what makes it so great. But for a team that has proven it already, the best big three in the NBA is Steph, Clay, and Draymond until it's not. And they've got Phoenix clipping at their heels. So I'm not willing to put Damian Lillard in that mix just yet. Do you get a gamer? Do you get somebody who's going to be that assassin with the game on the line the way that Jimmy has not been able to, the way that they've needed, like outside of Jimmy Butler? I'm not at all discrediting the overtime performances and what he did in the postseason this year. I'm not willing to go all in on that. I think it's still a title that belongs to the Golden State Warriors and their big three.
Well, Golden State's big three is great. They're obviously all Hall of Famers. They also lost in the second round to the Lakers. And the Miami Heat made the finals and beat the Bucks the Sixers, and the Celtics and gave the Nuggets a run. Now it's without Damian Lillard on their team. So to me, if you put him there, you have a guard, a wing, and a big. They are versatile at both ends. They perfectly complement each other. You don't have any questions about injury like you do in Phoenix. Obviously, Golden State's guys are up there in years. To me, puts the Heat right at the top of the heap in terms of championship contenders.
I like this conversation. This is a good one. Okay, we got to move on, though. It's time for a quick take. Timberwolves All-Star guard Anthony Edwards has agreed to a 5-year designated rookie maximum contract extension that could become worth $260 million. Tim, or sorry, this is going to Courtney. Is Anthony Edwards the best player that is 23 or younger?
This could go to Tyrese Halliburton, it can go to LaMelo Ball, but I will say that it is Anthony Edwards. He averaged 31.6 points per game in that Denver series against the eventual NBA champion. Over the last 2 years, he has 1,500 points, 100 steals in each of his past 2 seasons. He's a star. He's who the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to build this roster around. You thought of it as Cat's team at one point. This is Anthony Edwards' group going forward. And I like the extension. I think he was absolutely worth the money.
To me, it's a two-man race between the Ant-Man and Tyrese Halliburton, who, as you said, got that extension. I think because Anthony is a better defensive player, I would say I give the edge to him. And look, in this league, you typically need to have a great wing player to win. And for as good as Halliburton is, there's a ton of good point guards in the league. So I'm with you. It's a great thing for Minnesota to get this done. Ant-Man is a guy that's got a chance to be one of the faces of the league going forward. And, let's see if Minnesota can make some noise in the playoff this year.
Okay.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.